IND Hemp, Oilseeds, and Fiber presents The Goodness of Hemp Industrial Hemp Show, where we will pull back the curtain and take you right into the action at the heart of the hemp industry, as we follow along with our team and the others in the industry working hard every day to build and develop an all-American supply chain for industrial hemp grain and fiber products. Hi folks, thanks for tuning in to episode 2 of The Goodness of Hemp Industrial Hemp Show. I'm your host, Greg Necco, and today we're going to sit down with the founders of IND Hemp, Ken, Julie, and Morgan Elliott, and learn a little bit about how IND Hemp was started. So let's get right to it.
Hey, this is Ken Elliott. This is my wife, Julie. We're in Yaak, Montana, and we wanted to sit down with you today and explain a little bit of how IND Hemp got started. And the story goes back to 2011 when I was in the environmental business. I'd been in the environmental business for nearly 30 years, over 30 years, and just did some really cool work around the country, around the world, cleaning up some terribly contaminated sites, military bases, chemical manufacturing facilities, munitions, weapons facilities. Really cool place. Mining sites. It was really cool. And then in 2011, I ended up purchasing a superfund site in Wolf Point, Montana, and it was an old oil refinery site. And the idea at that point was to purchase it, clean it up, reposition it as a clean energy refinery, put a bunch of Native Americans to work and create some opportunities in Northeast Montana. And for a lot of reasons, it just hasn't happened yet. But during that process, we looked at trying to use industrial hemp as a phytoremediation alternative to clean up a site that's heavily contaminated. Hundreds of thousands of cubic yards of material got to be cleaned up, and it's one of those things you just can't dig it up and haul it to a landfill. So we looked at trying to figure out what would be the model, or what would be the greatest opportunity, and we looked at the Chernobyl cleanup, and they'd use industrial hemp for the cleanup there. And so we tried to figure out, well, if it worked there, possibly it works at the refinery site. And so we got involved with that. And that was back in 2013, 2014 timeframe when we were trying to assess whether that made any sense at all. And during that time frame, the laws changed. The hemp bill was passed at that point in 2014, 2015. We're sitting around talking about cleaning up a site using industrial hemp. We're working with the EPA and the state of Montana, trying to figure out where we can get some seed to clean the site up. And then all of a sudden, I've got the license. I got the first license in the state of Montana to use industrial hemp, to plant industrial hemp, and the IND Hemp Show took off at that point, and that's where the goodness of hemp started.
Hi, my name is Morgan Elliott. I'm the co-founder of IND Hemp, and I am our head of operations here at our facilities in Fort Peck, Montana. So I went to school at the University of Missouri and Columbia and got my degree in chemical engineering, and went to work for Archer Daniels Midland in Decatur, Illinois. And so I worked at their corn processing facility and then their soybean specialty proteins facility. And so I got a really good exposure to large ag and big food manufacturing. I did some process engineering, project engineering, supervisor work, just a gamut of roles. And ADM does a fantastic job of really training up their engineers to be really critical troubleshooters, and just like I said, exposed to a lot of stuff. So I had a really great career path at ADM. And then in 2016, unfortunately, my mom was killed in a car accident, and just kind of really put my whole world upside down. And I wish that she was here today, but I know that there's a reason for everything, and it's amazing to see kind of like how far we've come as a family with that. And so kind of in response to her passing, we started a nonprofit, a ministry up in northeastern Montana, and that's really what kind of brought us back. And so I actually left ADM and started this nonprofit and spent a year or more on the road. I lived out of a van and had really good experiences going around recruiting and fundraising for our nonprofit. And it's about that time that Dad was kind of talking to me about this hemp project he was working on. And he'd been working on it for several years. And I kind of always just like, yeah, whatever, like you're the crazy guy talking about hemp, and didn't give him much credit.
After 2014, 2015, 2016, all times of trial and error. We're working with a lot of our local farmers. I planted by myself. The first year found a local farmer who helped me out, and what a fiasco that was. That was a fiasco. We didn't know what we were doing. We got a crop up, but it didn't look very good. The next year, it didn't look very good. Folks were coming to us talking about cannabinoids, but our farmers in our areas didn't know anything about cannabinoids. We weren't interested in doing it. There's a lot of talk about a lot of money back in those days, and a lot of people were making money. And for us, we got into this thing because our neighbors and our friends were farmers, and they were struggling in northeast Montana, trying to make it on raising wheat and maybe some barley. We had some friends in the Midwest who were trying to make it on corn and soybeans, and our family, at that point was focused on trying to help the farmers. Well, what could we do to make the biggest footprint in farm country and help out as many folks as we could? And
so when I reconnected with Ken, he was up in Wolf Point, Montana, and all about this hemp stuff, and we're going to do it. The farm bill is going to pass, and it's going to help our Montana farmers. And early on, we went to a friend's house of his who is a farmer, and 1,500 acres, I think, and
15,000 acres.
Sorry, 15,000. There you go.
Yeah.
That's about the only way to make it up in that part of the country, because they make so little on their acres of wheat. Like $14 per acre of wheat with a $17 government subsidy. So it's like, how can that be? This isn't good. This isn't sustainable if we want to have family farms continue and be passed down in future generations. And Ken just knew that in 2018 the Farm Bill was going to pass to decriminalize, let's call it, industrial hemp. And it did, but he knew it was going to happen. And so he started putting the bug in his daughter Morgan's ear about coming on board with us. And
when Dad started talking to me more about the opportunity with his company and the idea of hemp, it really started to resonate with me. And so I was like, well, I'll jump on a conference call with you and see how that goes. From there, it was just like, man, this is what I want to do. Like that first conference call, like working with my dad, being a part of this conversations, like seeing like kind of the vision of what it could be was really enticing, and it was good to be back like critical thinking, and so that's kind of where I launched and really threw myself into IND Hemp.
So we started off with a 5-head press and focused on trying to raise hemp in northeast Montana on the Indian reservation, and then recognized after that first year that we were going to need a place a lot bigger than a 5-head press.
And so when we kind of started this, it was this idea of, a lot of people want to grow it and a lot of people want to consume it, but there's really not a whole lot of people in the middle, and that's kind of where I came in and said, well, I can build you a facility, that's about all I know, and that's exactly what we did. And so we kind of went down the path. We knew that OILSEEDS was a good fit for not only our community and what we were trying to do in Montana, but it was a good fit for our strengths and what we were trying to work on, the people that we had connected with in the industry, my familiarity with specialty proteins and nutritious foods and manufacturing, it just kind of all fit. And so we quickly went from just like a 5-head press to something much bigger. The more we looked at Montana acreage and what we were trying to do and the impact we were trying to make, it made more sense for us to go bigger and bigger.
So we tried really hard to find a place, and in Montana there's just not a lot of manufacturing facilities or buildings that you can even convert to a manufacturing facility. But we started in Glasgow, Montana, thought we had a place there.
And while we were working with kind of an engineer there, he said, well, this place in Havre is for sale. So we went up to Havre, and
we recognized that the Havre facility wasn't going to work. It wasn't what the owner of the property suggested it might be. So during the due diligence process, we decided that ain't going to work. So now we're in a position where we've got our equipment coming in from England. It's being loaded onto a ship and being sent to the U.S. We've got seed that we've just delivered to our farmers and who are under contract. And so we've got to have a place to have them harvest their seed and bring it in. We're going to crush it and process it and pay them for their product. And we
have no place.
We have no place. And so we had some friends, had an engineer who said, hey, I think I know of a place, and it's in Fort Benton. And sure enough, we went down there, drove down there the next day.
And so coming back to Montana was really a move to come back home. I know I didn't grow up here, but Montana very much feels like home now. I've been able to make some incredible relationships, and I think I'm in a community that really values not only our business, but our family and what we're bringing to the community. I feel like they've just, picked us up and adopted us quickly. I love to think that, we're hiring people here from town, like our interns, our kids that go to high school here. We're trying to help farmers that shop at the same grocery store that I shop at. Montana has a really unique opportunity right now to lead the nation in grain and fiber production, and we're just so thankful for the support we've gotten from the State Department, the support from the city of Fort Benton, and just the magnitude of the scale we can actually create an impact in. You always think of these world problems or global disasters, and you feel paralyzed to make real change or to really do anything to help. And this is the one time I feel like we actually can make some help, or we can create value, and we can do something to make a difference.
From the Elliott family perspective, it's like what we're doing in rural America, what hemp can do in rural America throughout the United States, is something that soybean and corn or cotton can't do. It can revitalize our communities. The science behind hemp is an amazing thing, and so what our goal is as a family, and we're a family-based company, is to create opportunity and hope in small communities and rural communities around the country, so that farmers and rural America can create opportunities so that their kids can come back and work on the farm, work in these small communities. And that's what's really motivated us as a family. How can we help? How can we make a difference? And that's what we're doing. We're trying to be we reference the goodness of hemp, and I can tell you from rural communities that struggle, hemp is a hope for farmers who would like to hand down the farm to the next generation. It's not hopeful to hand down a farm that struggles with wheat or corn, and where hemp can. Hemp's got the opportunity to make a difference in farm country, and we're glad to be a part of that.